Good morning, everybody. Hopefully, you are all doing well. Probably should have checked my settings and everything before I went live, but it appears everything's all right. So, hopefully, everybody can see me, hear me, feel me very well. It is December 12th, and my wife and I are going to be leaving for Florida here in a few hours. My wife, daughter, and I are going to be leaving for Florida in a few hours. Very excited, a little bit nervous because I've never traveled with a baby, but we're going to figure out how that goes. It's probably not going to go well, but we're going to do our best. So, um, please send super chats to help calm the nerves of everybody. I'm being slightly facetious, but I want to talk about the foreign aid and some of the stuff that came out of the Pentagon. I want to talk about Charlie Kirk because that's kind of making the rounds again. The Nick Fuentes and Piers Morgan interview, which was just objectively hilarious. And also, there was a clip that literally came up when I was before I went live, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit. And then of course Tim Pool, and did he or didn't he fake his own shooting? I don't know, but I lean in one direction. So I think that's about all for the introduction to the show. I don't know how long I'm going to go, maybe like an hour or so. It is a cold day here in Pennsylvania. Not actually. It's sunny out and it's not windy, but there's snow, and I'm just not a fan of that stuff. So, anyways, please hit the like button below. Please consider becoming a channel member for the lowly price of $2.99 a month. What else? Go to Fox Sons Coffee. Make sure you send Steven a hello and buy a bag of coffee off him because he is just incredible. He just sent me a bag for Christmas, and very, very grateful for everything he does. And of course, go to tigerfitness.com, use code Kyle at checkout to let them know that I sent you. Get all the supplements, get you all jacked and tan. They just had their Black Friday sale, and I'm sure they're going to have a Christmas sale here very, very shortly. So make sure you go over there and get the best supplements that you could buy. You could literally find anything and everything there: pre workout supplements, multivitamins, non stim pre workouts, protein powder, protein bars, even like some new protein pancakes and stuff like that. So there's plenty of stuff over there. So make sure you go check all that out. And without further ado, let's get into the rest of today's show. Oh, yeah, I am live on Twitter again. I caved and bought the blue check mark because unfortunately you can't stream to Twitter unless you have the blue check mark. So, anyways, let's rock and roll. And one more time, good morning, everybody. I just look like a total shill. So, first thing I want to do actually is shill the Heavy's headphones. So, I think I might have talked about this. I know I definitely talked about it on 5 till midnight. Maybe that was just before the show, but my wife got me my Christmas present early, which are the Heavy's headphones. I might have talked about these a little bit last week. You could change the shells on them. So, I have the Solosis shells on them right now from their latest album. And then I have the Heavy's hat on, obviously. And like everything about these are just incredible. They have like the best marketing team out there, and I get why they sell a quality product. These feel very nice. They're a little huge, so if I take my hat off, they look a little bit ridiculous on my bald head, but they sound incredible because there's actually 4 speakers in each headphone. Um, I'm a fan. I'm sold. I have 4 pairs of shells. The ones that my wife got me were Kill Switch Engage, and then obviously they came with an original pair, and then I also bought the Solosis and Sepultura shells. I bought a hat, and I bought the gaming headset. So I do contemplate doing gaming streams in the future. I don't know when that'll be, but I don't know. Maybe I'll just run through some old games or something and just kind of bullshit with the people here. Maybe I'll just do that for members. I don't know. I'll figure something out. But like I said, hopefully everyone's doing well. Hopefully everybody's staying warm. I know in Florida, where I'm going to be here in less than 12 hours, the temperature is like a low of 50, which like up here, that'd be like summertime up here right now, because right now we're down like the other day, it was in like 8 degrees with a high of like 30. So I think it was like 25 degrees when I left the house this morning. So cold, but with no wind and the sun out, it doesn't feel that bad. So hopefully that's all good to go well. Our flight did get a little bit delayed, so everything will be all right though. We're gonna be leaving for the airport here in probably about 3 or 4 hours. So I figured I would just do a stream because I'm not going to be doing a stream Sunday because I'm going to be in shorts and Hawaiian shirt or a tank top throughout the weekend. So there's going to be no stream. And then I'm going to try to get a guest for next week, but we'll see what happens. So the NDAA, the National Defense Authority Act, I think that's what it's called. For some reason, I kept drawing a blank on that. Um, was just published. I covered the national defense strategy or security strategy. I apologize. The or security strategy. I covered that on the show on Sunday with Nico. Well, not with Nico, but after Nico had got off. And I kind of covered what the stuff was going on there and kind of what the national security strategy is, considering our own hemisphere and also considering China. So I wanted to cover that. Hey, Tyler. Good morning. 40 degrees here at 7 a.m. Ridiculously cold. Yeah. Listen, it was literally less than 10 degrees on my way to work on, I think it was Monday or Tuesday. So it's been a pretty cold week here. Yesterday at work, I didn't have to leave the shop that much. So I got to stay inside where it was pretty warm for most of the day. But then when I left, I'm like, okay, my tolerance for cold is up because I didn't have to keep going in and out. I did, however, work out in my garage gym, which my garage is not insulated. So I check my heater to see what temperature it is out there. Outside, it'll usually be about 20 degrees cooler than it is inside the garage. My heater didn't make it past 34 degrees this morning. So when I got to the garage gym, I normally have sweatpants, a hoodie on, and then actually I'll like eventually get warm enough. I'll be able to take the hoodie off and I normally have a tank top on underneath. And I'll work out like that, which actually sounds like it'd be really cold. But when you don't have any like airflow or anything like that, and it's freezing cold outside, but the garage, at least is covered, it's not as bad as it sounds. It's still cold, but not that bad. I have to wear gloves when I'm working out because a barbell sitting outside is very cold. So that was my morning. So in the national security strategies, they had laid out they want to pivot over to the Western hemisphere. So obviously, kind of Latin America, which we can kind of see that they're doing, still in the oil tanker from Venezuela, and then also all the boat strikes and the ongoing military tensions with Maduro. Part of me still thinks that Trump is almost bluffing at this point to just try and see if he can get Maduro to leave without actually taking any military action. I don't know what's gonna happen. To me, it still looks like they really want regime change, but I think Trump and his administration realizes that it's very, very unpopular, so they may not go for it. They may just kinda pack up and go home, but at the same time, Trump also doesn't wanna take an L in front of everybody because it's not Trump's fashion, which is the exact same reason why he wanna end the war in Ukraine is because there has to be some kind of about face. There has to be some kind of victory for the Trump administration for them to say that, like, oh, we did this right. Well, they can't do that in Ukraine. And right now, they can't say that in Venezuela. They stole an oil tanker, but Maduro's still in power. And the claim is that Maduro's the head of a gang, the Cartel de los Soles, which doesn't actually exist. They want to claim that they had some kind of victory without getting too involved. Well, I don't think you can have both those things. And it really seems like you can't have both those things. So, um, when it comes to the foreign aid front, I remember everybody was cheering on the administration when they claimed that they eliminated USAID. But actually, what happened was basically they shut it down as an independent organization, but now it's assimilated in the State Department under Marco Rubio, which, as we've covered on previous shows, Marco Rubio is pretty much running the administration's foreign policy right now. And you could tell that by the net result being everything being an absolute disaster. I do got to give credit where it's due, though, because there are negotiations ongoing, which there weren't under the Biden administration, just because I think Jake Sullivan and Anthony Blinken weren't really interested in negotiations, and Biden wasn't. He just was out to lunch. I think Trump is trying to a small degree, but Witkoff and Rubio are just too incompetent to actually settle anything. And like Russia has made their objectives clear. Venezuela is pretty well saying that like we're not going to pack up and leave. And especially if you go after Maduro in any kind of serious way, there's going to be a large rally around the flag effect. Scott Horton was just on Dave Smith's show, Part of the Problem, and he kind of talked about how back in 2019 and 2020 when they tried to conduct Operation Gideon, which is where they sent down some U.S. forces and tried to overthrow Maduro that way, there was 500,000 to 1,000,000 people in the streets protesting this regime change. Well, do you think it's going to be any different after 6 years later when the guy's still in power and still won the election? And people can say that they're not legitimate or whatever, but I don't know, man. If 1,000,000 people come out in support of you, not that that's indicative of the entire population, but if that many people come out in support of you, then I have to imagine there's some kind of loyalty here, and they're maybe not going to be exactly amped up to just allow the U.S. to walk in and overthrow the regime. And it's also funny that like a lot of elected officials, I don't know names off the top of my head, but I did see a few throw this up. Oh, the people of Venezuela want regime change, so therefore we should commit to military action and do regime change in Venezuela. Why are American representatives concerned with what Venezuelan people want? On top of that, this whole policy is pushed by what Brad Pierce quoted as the Florida man occupied government, where Marco Rubio represents this giant Miami industrial complex of ex Cubans, ex Venezuelans, ex Hondurans, ex Guatemalans that all come from Latin America and go into Florida, and then they all push for these military operations, these regime change wars, and foreign intervention into their home countries. And then you have all these people on the right who I actually like that are endorsing this policy. Like, I thought the whole deal was immigration and Americans first, but we're pushing a regime change war for people who've been here for maybe one generation. Are you guys fucking nuts? Like, come on, get real here. This is so ridiculous. So now that my whole preamble, ranting and raving is kind of done here, let's go to foreignassistance.gov and we will talk about some of the stuff that's going on here and the way that they're kind of laying this out. Get back to StreamYard here and put myself down in the corner and zoom in a little bit. Where the hell is it? There it is. So they claim peace and security, $28.8 billion, humanitarian assistance, $15.3 billion. And this goes to the whole $1 trillion Pentagon budget, $13.2 billion for health, $10.92 billion for economic development, $6 billion in program support, $3.194 billion for multi-sector, $2.75 billion for democracy, human rights, and governance. 1.47 billion for education and social services and 454.1 million for the environment. So it's funny, not a lot of people are actually talking about how much is going to East Asia and Oceania, which is receiving a pretty decent chunk. So under the Department of State, Israel is going to get 6.8 or yeah, 6 I can't pronounce that, but $6.8 billion, which they normally got about, I think it was $4.3 billion. I have highlighted down there $1.5 billion for Taiwan, which is just ridiculous. Ukraine gets another $3.8 billion, actually $3.9 billion because it's close enough. What the hell is that? DoD foreign military financing, stabilization operations, and security sector reform. And this is just under the world. The Department of State for $1.85 billion. And then, like I said, Taiwan gets $1.5 billion. So it's kind of convenient that a lot of people didn't really talk about the Taiwan factor because Taiwan is kind of like what they're trying to use against is like an unsinkable aircraft carrier against Asia. All right, let me get to the super chat real quick. Hey, Sighthound Siege, good to see you. Kyle's back. Great red evening discussing Saint Anger and other metal stuff. Yes, absolutely. People know me that and thank you for the 4.99 super chat, Siege. I really appreciate it. I love Saint Anger. People can debate me on that all day, but I will go to bat for Saint Anger all day, every day. And once you get past the guitar tones and the drumming or the drum tone, then like you have a very solid album with just awesome songs front to back. And I will go to bat for that all day. But yeah, Siege, thank you so much for the 4.99 super chat. Everybody else, if you're feeling so generous, please leave a little bit more. And I would greatly appreciate it, and will help me continue to do everything that I do here. So anyways, it's very convenient that a lot of people leave out the Taiwan foreign military financing because yes, Ukraine and Israel, the two largest recipients of foreign aid, but Taiwan is starting to creep up there too because people like Elbridge Colby, Rick Scott, JD Vance, Steve Bannon, a lot of people in like this MAGA aligned wing, and even Tucker Carlson to a slight degree, although I don't think he would support the foreign military financing. I would love to see a discussion with him and maybe Jeffrey Sachs, a little bit more expanding upon the whole pivot to Asia and the war with China aspect. But a lot of the people in like the MAGA wing, even outside of like the whole neoconservative wing, really are in favor of this. We're going to fight a war with China. We need to bolster our presence there in the Indo-Pacific, as they would call it. And I talked about this a lot on the last show, where they're trying to set up these strategic partnerships with Japan, with the Philippines, with India, although that's not really floundering that well. South Korea, all these different outposts where they could basically, oh, in Australia as well, to basically defend China on the first island chain against China if this was a, um, in the event of a war. This makes me want to do a show reviewing yacht rock music. Um, I do a Substack, and Tyler, I don't know if you subscribe to it, but everybody should go subscribe to the Great Megalodon, which is my Substack where I just cover music. Yacht rock is just not my deal, man. It's really not. I get why people love it, but it's just not me. Um, but they want to use Taiwan, Japan, South Korea, Australia as basically unsinkable aircraft carriers in different outposts to stage a all-out war against China, where they would have, drone swarms, and then these countries with weapon defense systems, and also use different aircraft carriers to stage a war with China over Taiwan because um, the whole chip manufacturing, which they laid out in the national security strategy, that they wanted to, basically bolster Taiwan and surrounding countries in a partnership against China. So, yeah, it is impressive that a lot of people left that part out when they were talking about the foreign assistance. Contributions to International Development Association, Department of Treasury, 1.38 billion. More stuff for Ukraine, 1.4 billion. Now we're down in the millions. Ukraine security assistance, 900 million. More Ukraine. There's just so much financing here, and see another $8.5 million through logistics and support services in the South and Central Asia region. So this is all from foreignassistance.gov. Last updated on November 12th, 2025. Let's go over to the Department of Defense and talk about this data through 9/29/25. So this is about the federal budget and budgetary assistance. Um, the budget or they're planning to spend $1.45 trillion in total obligations. Um, how is funding distributed in the FY 2025 for the Department of Defense? Each year, federal agencies receive funding from Congress known as budgetary resources. In FY 2025, the Department of Defense had $2.21 trillion distributed amongst its 6 subcomponents. Agencies spend available budgetary resources by making financial promises called obligations. In this section, we showed total budgetary resources broken out by agency subcomponent and how much that funding has been obligated by the fiscal year selected. We show outlays for each agency subcomponent, or the amount of money has actually been paid out, not just promised. Note that outlays for any given year are not a subset of the agency's obligations for that year. So defense, over $600 billion, and that was obligations, and then, a little bit more for total budgetary resources. And then they have the different military sales programs, how much they pay the military members, Air Force, Army, and national security assistance. All very interesting stuff. So, let me run an ad real quick and we will continue on here in 1 minute. All right, we're going to take a second today to chill and tell you about the show's sponsors, Tiger Fitness. Make sure you go to the link below to get all the supplements that I use day in, day out, and beyond. As I always say, you do not need supplements to become all jacked and tan or to progress in your health journey, but they could definitely be a useful tool in that respect. So as you can see on tigerfitness.com, we got MTS Nutrition, Blackstone Labs, Ambrosia, HPN, Nutrix Research, America Labs, Alani New, Pump Chasers, there's Redcon One, Accent Sledge, plenty of different companies that pretty much have absolutely any supplement you could possibly think of. Pre-workouts, fat burners, BCAAs, electrolyte mixes, you name it, it's on there. So go to Tiger Fitness through the link below. Use code Kyle at checkout to let them know that I sent you. Get your protein powder, you name it, anything that's going to help you stick to your diet and hopefully achieve your health goals. All right, thanks. Back to the show. All right. So, real quick, I kind of wanted to talk about the Piers Morgan and Nick Fuentes interview. I do have one more news article that I want to cover, and then I got a couple more clips. I wish I would have pulled up some more clips, but we talked about this a little bit on Monday on 5 till midnight. So, make sure you go subscribe to that channel and check out that show every Monday night at 8 p.m. Eastern time. We have a lot of fun over there. The Nick Fuentes and Piers Morgan interview was just absolutely hilarious, and it really shows you the difference generation by generation. So, uh, Piers Morgan is obviously a lot older than Nick Fuentes. I think Piers is like 60 years old. Um, and it just shows that like younger generations are so done with this constant guilt trip over the event that happened in the 40s where it killed a lot of people, and people know what I'm talking about. And also just like this offense over everything. Like people really don't care that much anymore. Like we've been so shamed out of any sense of pride in who we are and what it means to be an American that I think people are done just accepting this as the norm. And when you try to shame someone like a Fuentes, you're just going to get rejected. And it really fell flat. And one of the funniest parts, and a lot of people have pointed this out, so I'm definitely not the first person to point this out, and I didn't notice it at first, but, when he initially said, Piers that is, to Nick, "Oh, I don't know any Jewish people that use the HCOST, um, as a thing to beat people over the head with as a get out of jail free card." It's like, dude, you are so blatantly dishonest or just you haven't been paying attention over the last 2 years because ever since October 7th, 2023, what has every single person who defends Israel say? They don't even have to be Jewish. They always say this was the worst attack since 1945. This is the worst event and we have to stop it. You can't talk about this event because we'll have another one of those. America can't be a prosperous nation because if you have a whole bunch of white people that do something, then we'll have another one of those. Beating people over the head with this stuff is going to cause the exact opposite thing of what you want to actually happen. If you don't want anti-Semitism to rise, then you should allow people to just communicate freely about the events of the past, different influences, and the way that certain groups behave. You have to talk about this stuff openly because if you let it fester, then eventually you're going to get somebody like a Fuentes who just comes out and says it, and people flock to him because you've told everybody this is just forbidden to talk about. It's forbidden to be anti-Semitic. It's forbidden to be racist. So eventually someone's going to say, you know what? I don't care anymore. And people are going to flock to that person because you told everybody you cannot do this. Okay. Well, eventually it just turns out to be fuck you. I'm going to do what I want. And this person's going to rise to popularity because they're just saying the flat out truth. Or maybe not even the truth, but they're saying what can't be discussed in public. Because I don't think Nick's spot on about everything. I don't think anybody's spot on about everything. I've definitely been wrong about a lot of stuff. And this kind of gets us into the whole Charlie Kirk deal as well. Where I don't necessarily agree with Nick and his take on the Charlie Kirk assassination. I still don't know what happened. I don't think, and I'm going to be honest here, I don't think Israel did it. I understand why a lot of people think Israel did it, but I think you would have to step over mountains of Hezbollah or Israeli propaganda and straight up Zionism to get to that conclusion, which if you want to do that, okay, but I just don't think it, in my opinion, I don't think it's a credible conclusion because um, we don't really have a clear link here. Now, where I'll give Ian Carroll credit, and I think he's a little bit of a quack. Like, I think he really got out over his skis when he said that Israel did it for sure, or claimed that they're the most likely suspect. Um, you just have to step over so much evidence. Yeah, exactly. Piers then played a clip of a guy. Yeah, I meant to get back to this point. Piers then played a clip of a guy using the H as a get out of jail free card. Yeah, exactly. Oh, my mom died there. My dad died from stolen. Um, that's exactly what happened. And it's like, Piers, at least don't do that. If you're going to claim that nobody ever uses that, you can't do the exact same thing 5 minutes later. Like, it's too obvious. It's too on the nose. And I just, it's too much. You can't do that. But anyways, where Ian Carroll, I think, got out over his skis, you literally said that Charlie Kirk spent his entire life serving Israel, and then they magically did it. Come on, man. The other thing that everybody's kind of jumping on top of is Erica Kirk saying Shabbat Shalom, which Charlie Kirk would say Shabbat Shalom when he ended his stream. Not every single one, because to be honest, I really didn't watch that much Charlie Kirk's show. I think the only one I ever watched was one with Angela and Dave Smith, and that might be it. Just because I didn't really listen to Charlie Kirk. And for full transparency, I was way harsher on Charlie Kirk than perhaps I should have been looking back in retrospect. And it's a little bit of a lesson for me to learn to not be such a cynical asshole about everything, because when you're on Twitter and you're just constantly trying to get a hot take, sometimes you are a little bit spicier than you should be and should be warranted because you want to get clicks and because you think it's funny and because you're riled up and it's in the moment and you just want to fire something off. It's just a little bit of a reminder to just sometimes cool it. It's not as black and white as people think, but um the text message where Charlie Kirk said, Jewish donors play into every single stereotype, and I won't be bullied like this. For this is forcing me to leave the pro Israel cause entirely. I don't think he was really going to do it. If I'm being honest, I think that's more of just him being dramatic. Because one thing that he said to Candace Owens, to my understanding, when she was choosing to marry George Farmer, was, "Is this good for your brand?" Kind of seems to me that sometimes he would be dramatic for the sake of it, and that some of this stuff is about your brand. It was about his brand to basically please everybody. Like, he was in an impossible position, Charlie, that is, of trying to maintain this coalition of growing anti-Israel sentiment. And I shouldn't even say anti-Israel sentiment, but anti-Netanyahu's government sentiment, and then also please all the donors and the Trump administration, because the Trump administration and the donors are basically on the same page. People could say that, I've tried to lay this out before, and it's very frustrating that like people put Trump in this ambiguous position where they don't want to criticize him and claim that he's not on the side of the neocons, but somehow he's not on either side. But to me, it's just clear, if you are putting a government together of largely Zionist and pro-Israel people, and you're condemning anti-Semitism at every turn, which he has done, then eventually you have to say, okay, he's picked a side, and it's the neoconservatives and the pro-Israel lobby that he is firmly on the side of, because he's the one pushing a lot of this stuff and he's choosing to do this. Um, I should just pull up my tweet that I threw out earlier about where Charlie Kirk was on this. Let me scroll down. Okay. Let me share this tab instead. Lift it up and bam. Zoom in. Erica Kirk saying Shabbat Shalom is apparently some giant Israeli conspiracy because Charlie Kirk sent a text about quote unquote leaving the pro-Israel cause, ... Even though Charlie would say Shabbat Shalom when closing out a show. Is it possible that him and Erica were just very pro-Israel, as if there isn't hours of Charlie doing pro-Israel content? I'm not saying there's a 0% chance that Israel had a hand in the assassination, but we got to be real here. And that is my sincere belief, because if it's some giant, I don't understand how people get to it's some giant conspiracy with Erica Kirk when Charlie would say this too. I'm just not seeing it here. This to me just seems like this is who they were. It's not some giant conspiracy. If you have years and years and years of pro-Israel content and being a straight up Zionist, it's okay to just admit that and say, hey, they liked Israel. Erica even said they met in Israel. Now, could there be changing opinions? Absolutely. But I'm sorry if I just don't buy it. So the next thing that people hopped on was Charlie lobbied Trump against war with Iran, which to me is just ridiculous on his face. I had to dig through tweets in support of the strikes to find these, which I'll read these two tweets here in a second. People are saying we have to believe anonymous sources and not believe his own words. It's such a ridiculous standard. So we have two explanations. Either one, he lobbied and failed and turned around to do propaganda for the administration, getting into a war with Iran, or he supported it, which to me is just obvious. I saw after that, I said, you tell me what seems more likely, because one is way worse than two, which if we're talking about this, either, like I said, he tried and then would go on to lie in support of the administration after he lobbied against him doing it, or, he just supported it. To me, it's easy enough to just say he supported the strikes. Do I support the strikes? No, absolutely not, because now we are in a war with Iran. Trump calls it the 12-day war, but once again, the fundamentals of that conflict are still not settled. Iran never said they're going to abandon their nuclear program. And Trump's has maintained for a very, very long time. All the conservatives are right about this. He's been very consistent that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. Are they actually getting a nuclear weapon? No. But he's been very consistent that they can't have that. Okay. So not only did he lie us into that war, but he did strike them to get us into that war. And once again, the fundamentals of that conflict are still not solved. So all the plan trusters are wrong that this was just a cakewalk in the park. They just kicked this down the road for a little bit longer. So reading this tweet, quote, Iran gave President Trump no choice. For a decade, he has been adamant that Iran will never get a nuclear weapon. Iran decided to forego diplomacy in pursuit of a bomb. This surgical strike operated perfectly. President Trump acted with prudence and decisiveness. Does that sound like he was lobbying against the strike? I'm sorry, guys. Just objectively, no. And then the other one, no nukes for Iran, no troops on the ground, no U.S. troops dead, no regime change, no nation building, no war. President Trump with a historic masterclass. I'm sorry, but to me, that just does not sound like he was lobbying against the strikes. It sounds like he was in support of them. And once again, all the people who are saying that Israel did the assassination are all depending on anonymous sources who will not come forward and clarify what they're saying. Harrison Smith said that. Candace Owens has said that. A bunch of people said they have anonymous sources. Okay, eventually we need an official source. We need somebody to come out and say this or prove it. Because I'm sorry if I don't believe the anonymous sources over a man's own words. It's just the way it is. Once again, if you can prove that he objectively did that, I'll hear you out. But so far, I haven't seen any of that. So let's go back to the defense policy, the NDAA, and we'll do one more thing and probably wrap up there. U.S. House backs massive defense policy bill, the Senate next. Summary. Senate expected to pass the bill next week. Trump says he will sign. Measure raises troop pay, supports Ukraine. Bills compromise between Republicans, Democrats, Senate, and the House. Washington on December 10th from Reuters. The U.S. House of Representatives passed a massive defense policy bill on Wednesday, authorizing a record $901 billion in annual military spending, paving the way for the must-pass measure to become law for the 65th straight year. The tally was 312 to 112 in favor of the National Defense Authorization Act, sending it for consideration by the U.S. Senate, which is expected to pass it next week. The $901 billion in defense spending is $8 billion more than President Donald Trump's request earlier this year. The NDAA also provides $400 million in military assistance to Ukraine in each of the next 2 years and includes other measures reinforcing U.S. commitment to Europe's defense, reflecting most of the lawmakers' continuing strong support for Kiev as it fights Russian invaders. The sweeping 3,086-page bill unveiled Sunday includes measures to make life better for the troops, including a 4% pay raise and improvements in base housing, but does not include insurance for the coverage military families to get fertility treatments, including embryo transfers and vitro fertilization, something opposed by Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson of Louisiana, a social conservative, which I think calling Mike Johnson a social conservative is a little bit of a misnomer because he has supported plenty of foreign aid. And he's basically just a Trump lackey. Whatever he wants, he's going to do. And he was kind of this way under Biden, too. So the legislation is compromised between versions of the NDAA passed earlier this year by the Senate and House, both controlled by Trump's Republicans. Members of both parties urged lawmakers to support it, even if they objected to individual provisions. I do support this bill. That does not mean that I do not have concerns. I do. Representative Adam Smith of Washington, the top Democrat on the House Armed Service Committee, in a speech before the vote. Spending levels. Trump in May asked Congress, for a national defense budget of $892.6 billion for fiscal year 2026, flat compared with 2025. The House bill set spending at that level, but the Senate had authorized $925 billion. The NDAA authorizes Pentagon programs, does not fund them. Congress must separately pass funding in a spending bill for the fiscal year ending in September 2026. In addition to the typical NDAA provisions on defense acquisitions with competition rivals such as China and Russia, This year's bill focused on cutting programs reviled by Trump, such as diversity, equity, and inclusion training, unless it's for Jews. The NDAA is one of the few major pieces of legislation to make it through Congress every year, and lawmakers take pride in having passed it annually since 1961. This year's process was a bit rockier than usual. The rule paving the way for the House vote passed earlier on Wednesday and by only 215 to 211 after a long delay in which few Republicans changed their votes from no to yes. Trump has said he will sign the NDAA into law once it reaches the White House. So, as usual, the military industrial complex will roll on regardless of who's in there. And I want to hand a fat fell for it again award to all the Trump supporters that thought we were going to be rolling back foreign aid and we're pulling out of the Middle East and all this other stuff. We're getting more involved. And Trump is no exception to any of these rules. He's better on immigration than pretty much every other candidate, but other than that, he's largely the same. It's just pretty much an objective fact at this point. And people who went out and voted for him, I get it. He was definitely better than Kamala, but let's not pretend ourselves that he's some great savior because it's pretty clear at this point that he's not. So there's two other things I want to cover, and I'll probably wrap up here in a few minutes. Tim Pool, the guy who gets me so many Twitter impressions for making fun of him because he is kind of a law cow. Multiple sources now. A police report states that the alleged shooting at Tim Pool's house cannot be substantiated. There was an account that I can't remember the guy. I think his name was Adam, who called the local police authorities, and they couldn't find any confirmation. Another report, no confirmation. If you're asking me, I don't think it happened. We don't have any evidence of it, and Tim Pool had claimed that there was shooting, which was done by his brother apparently on his property around this time last year or 2 years ago. Yeah, the beanie can't carry his career anymore. Yeah, exactly. He has to fake shootings to get people in, and his viewership's down because just trying to say, "Oh, I don't care about Israel," isn't a popular position anymore. When that government has speech laws, which I cover this on every single show, when there are 38 states where you can't criticize Israel as a public sector employee, I think it's a little bit more than, oh, I just don't care about Israel. It's like, oh, no. We can't have foreign influence on our government anymore. When this is dragging down the Republicans, and it's not Candace Owens, despite what all these retards are saying, eventually you have to talk about this issue. It's not Candace Owens costing the Republicans the midterms. It is Israel. It is Ukraine. It is the economy. It is immigration. All the things that Trump ran on that said he was going to fix and did not fix. This is what's going to cost Republicans in midterms. Whether they want to admit it or not, that's what's going to cost them in the midterms. It's not Candace Owens sounding off on her podcast. It's not going to change some people's minds, sure, but not the majority. The majority of people, I don't think, are really listening to this. The reason why they'll lose the midterms is because I have to pay $700 a month for healthcare as a healthy 31-year-old with a wife who's 29 years old and a 4-month-old daughter. $710 a month. And there's people, that pay way more than me that were fucking yelling at me saying, "Oh, that's really good for insurance." No, what you pay for insurance, if you paid more than $710, that's even more ridiculous. It shouldn't cost us anything to insure us three as a family. It shouldn't, because we're all healthy. We don't cost a lot. We don't go to the doctor. Now, granted, a newborn baby, yeah, you're going to take her to the doctor for quite a few appointments, but like the cost to insure should not be that much because we're all relatively healthy. If there are pre-existing conditions, if I broke an arm or if I was at the doctor's all the time, then okay, fair enough, charge us more. But we don't do that. That's going to be a reason that Trump loses the midterms. The fact that we're still fighting, a proxy war in Ukraine. And Trump is still insisting upon security guarantees and then using frozen Russian funds to rebuild Ukraine and the mineral deal and still sending foreign assistance and arms and intelligence to Ukraine. That's going to be another reason because Trump promised to end this. And I called it. He wasn't going to do it. And I was proven right. That report appears to be reported, but wouldn't turn over the vid. Oh, gotcha. Yeah, and there was an article that Connor Freeman sent me, and I can't remember where it was from, but he claimed that he wouldn't turn over the video because it would compromise already ongoing investigations and potential security. I could believe that. I'm still leaning on it didn't happen. If I'm being completely honest with you, I lean on that. Um, Siege, thank you again for the 4.99 super chat. Very, very much so appreciated. Here's another super chat you for you and the family, Kyle. Metal question: Metallica or Megadeth? My all caps is probably show which one's my favorite. Siege, I'm sorry, man. I gotta go with Metallica. I know it's gonna upset some people, and I love both. I've seen Megadeth 4 times, I think 4 or 5 times. Yeah, I think 4 times. And I've seen Metallica 3 times. I'm just a fan of and this is just my bias right now, maybe that'll change if I listen to Megadeth a little bit more. I love both, but I do have to go with Metallica because I think they just like, their songwriting is a little bit better, and there's a consistency in their career, whereas Megadeth has a little bit more of, like, highs and lows. Metallica's a little bit more consistent when, like, Megadeth is really good, they're really good, but when they're not that good, it's like 13, right? 13 just wasn't that good of an album. Risk wasn't that good of an album. But overall, like, all the stuff is still enjoyable. United Abominations is great. Endgame was great. Obviously, one of the albums I go to, and I think I even said this on that show where we talked about um Saint Anger, that Rust in Peace really had like a really good clear mixing. Like, that was the pinnacle of mixing back then because that was 1990. Love that album. So Megadeth still gets props all days. Um, Peace sells, but who's buying? Love that album as well. All the stuff on that's really good. I haven't really listened to too much newer Megadeth, like the most recent album and the album before that. But like everything I hear, I like. I did listen to Metallica's newer stuff, and I really like it. The only album I don't think I've ever really listened to in depth was Lulu. So, overall, still like, I still prefer Metallica to Megadeth, but, I definitely am getting into, like, my dad age because I just I do like Metallica. Like, I right now, my wife's Terrain has, Sirius XM on it because they throw out these little trial runs every here and there, and, I do turn on Maximum Metallica quite a bit, so it's just cool. Rest in peace. Love running unofficial 5Ks, that album. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I'm just saying I'm skeptical that this whole shooting happened at Tim Pool's house. And this is gonna be the last thing I cover for the day. It's honestly embarrassing. So there's gonna be a lot of caveats around this, but let me pull this up. One last thing, and then we will probably wrap up the show here in a few minutes. White House press secretary says Trump's bandages and hand bruising is because he's quote unquote literally shaking hands. The Oval Office is like a Grand Central Terminal. He is meeting with more people than any of you even know about on a daily basis. Oh yeah, anytime, Tyler. Thank you for stopping by. I wish I could do more of these because I do like being up and about in the morning, but unfortunately, the work schedule is 6:45 till about 3:45, 4. So unfortunately, that just is what it is.
Scott, thank you. The president's been spotted out and about a number of times with bandages on his hands. Could you please explain what that is about? Secondly, he noted on True Social the other day that he had aced 3 cognitive tests. Could you please clarify when those tests took place?
I can do that at a later date. Obviously don't have that in front of me. The president has spoken about that quite extensively throughout the years. As for the bandages on the hand, we've also given you an explanation for that in the past. The president is literally constantly shaking hands. The Oval Office is like Grand Central Terminal. He is meeting with more people than any of you even know about on a daily basis. He's also on a daily aspirin regimen, which is something his physical examinations has said in the past as well, which can contribute to that bruising that you see.
Okay. Does anybody seriously believe that? I want everybody in the chat to tell me, have you ever gotten a bruise on your hand from a handshake? Even if you shake a lot of people's hands, which there have been days that I've done that. Have any of you ever got a bruise on your hand from a handshake? I'm willing to bet that 10 people out of 10 have not gotten a bruise on their hand from a handshake. something else is going on here. And if I'm being honest, I think Trump's cognitive decline is getting worse. And I quote tweeted this. It's not as bad as Joe Biden. I've stated that very, very clearly. But clearly, Trump is just not the Trump he was back in 2016. And big surprise, he's 80 years old. The dude is getting old. Something's going on here. I don't know what it is. Are they putting adrenochrome in his hand? Are they giving him, I don't know. Something's going on here, and she is just that is blatant bullshit. Because it's been for months. Now you could say that, oh, he's been shaking hands for months. I just don't believe this. I do not believe this on his face. This is like literally just like when what's her face, Corinne Jean Pierre, or whatever the fuck her name was saying sharp as attack. Everybody was saying sharp as attack about Joe Biden. This is clearly a lie. So what's actually going on? I don't know, but I'm willing to bet it's just Trump's an old guy. When you're 80 years old, you're not quite what you used to be. You're not a spring chicken. And you can see this in the way that Trump talks, the way that he acts, the way that he was falling asleep in meetings. He's just not the same Trump he was 10 years ago. And that's all right. But don't sit here and lie to people, because that's just not what it's about. So, yeah. Anyways, I think that's about all I wanted to cover. Talked about Venezuela a little bit, talked about the Charlie Kirk stuff, Tim Pool, the NDAA, all the foreign financing and all that stuff. So I think we're going to end her there. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I will try to get a show in next week. If not, I'll definitely have one next Sunday. But I try not to go more than 7 days without doing a show. I do have a guest planned, or a couple guests planned. One very, very big guest, which I know everybody's going to love and everybody's going to tune in for. So as to when we'll schedule that, yeah, IV in my hand made my hand bruise. Exactly. I think that's probably what's going on here. But I have a very large guest coming on, hopefully soon. Just got to schedule that with him. I do have a returning guest that will be on sooner or later. Go to the Great Megalodon on Substack. Please subscribe there. Please leave super chats. Thank you guys so much. Consider becoming a channel member for the lowly price of $2.99 a month, where you can see all of Common Crown's footage. And I'm gonna try to do a little bit more videos, just for members only, and then maybe release them to the public. What else? I will be in Florida for the weekend till Monday. Unfortunately, I have to come back. Wish I could just stay down there, but I think that's all. So, guys, thank you so much for listening, and until next time, take care.